Yes, so it is today's topic, as you all know. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to talk here on this forum. So when I was asked by Dr. Vijaya to give this keynote address and I saw the topic biofertilizers and biopesticides, I just took the opportunity and I said, okay, why not I talk on organic farming as a whole, since biopesticides and biofertilizers are a major part of organic farming. So I have taken this opportunity to talk about organic farming, and we are going to look at it from various aspects, the plus and minus of organic farming, as well as what is the position of organic farming as of today in our country and in the world. So before I go ahead, I'm just going to give you an outline of what I'm going to cover. So it will be starting with history of organic farming. What is our organic farming? What are advantages, disadvantages, whether it is sustainable? What is its impact on climate change? What are the possible solutions and the ways ahead? And where do we stand today? So just to give you a brief history, on the screen, you will see right on the top, starting with present day, and you go backwards towards the left, it is 15,000 years ago. And if you notice that in India, we started organic farming much later than, let us say, in the Middle East, as well as, let us say, in China. So in our country, it was somewhere around 2,500 years ago that we really started pottery cultivation and agriculture, cultivation of crops. The history of organic farming, this is global. In the 1920s, this is when farmers, till then the farmers were only using natural means and traditional practices for farming. It was only in the Second World War, around 1939, when DDT was discovered. And then came a new era of chemical insecticides. So that is when chemical pesticides, chemical insecticides, fungicides, everything was chemical, including the fertilizers that were used. But then there were still people who said that, look, this is not the way forward. So as early as 1924, books were published, Spiritual Foundation for Renewal of Architecture, Health of Soil, and so on. Till 1972, the International Federation of Organic Movements was set up in France. So this was started in Europe. 1997, the National Organic Program came up in the United States, and 2004, the European Commission adopted the first action plan for organic farming. How about India? It was practiced in India since thousands of years. That means since we started, it was always organic farming. And at that time, India was one of the most prosperous countries in the world. However, around 1950s and 60s, as the population grew, there was severe food scarcity because of several other natural disasters as well. So there was severe food scarcity. And that is when M.S. Swaminathan, all of you know about him, he started the Green Revolution. And at that point of time, he said what is most important for India to survive is produce agricultural produce. Just keep producing more and more food so that we can feed our starving population. So production of food was the emphasis, and that is how it started in the 1960s and 70s. So large amount of land was brought under cultivation. We started using hybrid seeds, and organic fertilizers were replaced by chemical fertilizers because they gave fast results. Similarly, organic pesticides were replaced by chemical pesticides, again because they were much more effective on a shorter time scale. So when 2002, but all this, another 30 years or so later, people realized that using chemical fertilizers is not really the answer. And chemical pesticides, we need to go back to our roots. And that is when the Organic Farming Association of India was formed around 2002. So this is about 30 or 40 years later. This is an organization all over India. 2005, we got the first organic farming policy. As of March 2020, we have about 2.78 million hectares of farmland under organic cultivation in our country. Now it has increased, and I will tell you the latest figures later. So this is just about 2% of the total area under agriculture in our country, just 2%. Okay.
So,
so now this is, as I told you about the Green Revolution. So it had its own positive and negative points. The positive points were it gave food security, production of food doubled, very high yield, and of course, India from becoming a country which had to import food for feeding its millions became a food exporter. So it was that successful as far as production of food was concerned. But there were several negatives which I have listed. There's loss of soil fertility, erosion, toxicity in the soil. Beneficial microbes in the soil were getting destroyed. There was air pollution, pollution of groundwater, and so on. And there were several negatives which have come to be noticed nearly about 30 years later. So yes, you have to think of something else. Green Revolution may have been successful at that point of time, but now there are several drawbacks which we have noticed. So what is the alternative? Organic farming, since that was a method that we were using in India for thousands of years. So what does organic farming do? It is a method that cultivates land and raises crops so that soil remains alive, healthy, and fertile. It is a very efficient approach for maintaining environmental sustainability, reduction in the use of pesticides, fertilizers, removal of all chemical pollutants from the air, water, soil. It promotes biodiversity, which is very important, and supports a healthy economy. Now, just a minute. Yeah. What are the 6 basic methods of organic farming? So organic farming can be divided into broadly into these 6 classes where you maintain crop diversity, manage the soil, manage the weeds, because weeds are a very important factor which has to be taken into consideration for organic farming. Then you have to control other organisms, livestock, as well as biological management of the entire production of food. Okay, so now, but organic farming again has its own advantages and disadvantages. There is improvement in health. Okay, so better soil conservation, lesser groundwater pollution. There are several advantages. It uses less energy. It promotes biodiversity at least to 30% or so. And there is no use of genetically modified organisms. Probably it is more sustainable, one has to see. But a whole list of negatives have also come to be noticed. It is expensive. The yield, another very important factor is the yield by organic farming is 25% less than the conventional farming. By conventional farming, I mean what was being used during the Green Revolution. So this, because there is a less yield, in order to produce the same yield as conventional farming was giving, you need to use more land. And the only way to get more land is, the only way to get more land is to carry out deforestation, which again is not a climate friendly method. So this is a major limitation of organic farming. Also, it requires skill, it requires guidance. It is not any and everybody can do organic farming unless the farmers particularly need to be trained. A very important factor, as I said, more weeds and pests. And also, because we are using organic manures, it is possible that if the manure is not treated well, it is possible that we may have a risk of contamination from microbes such as E. coli. So this is important. Again, one has to be sure that one doesn't use such manure which has, let us say, human excreta in it. It also lacks the flexibility of using GMO. GMO has, that is, genetically modified organisms have their own advantages. So you cannot use it when you're doing organic farming by definition. Plus, when you use organic food, it is not necessarily grown in a farm next to you. So it has to be transported from far distance areas. And hence, you're having higher carbon emissions. So it may not be really environment friendly. So looking at the pros and cons, now I can give you an actual story. I mean, what shall I say? A true story that has happened. This is what happened in Sikkim. On the 1st of January 2016, Sikkim, the Indian state of Sikkim, decided to convert fully to organic farming, just so that we should have safe food. However, farmers were struggling to cope with reduced yields. widespread challenge of increased pests and diseases and pesticides, weeds. So in other words, according to the people who are growing organic food, they said they did not get enough assistance, they even did not get guidance, no training, etc. Anyway, because of all this, although the yield went down terribly in terms of crops and food sources, Sikkim became got an inflow of tourists increased by 25%. So yes, that was a plus point because it was fully organic. People from all over the world flocked to this state to see how it was going. But although they had a very high inflow of tourists, in order to maintain their own food security, they had to rely on imports. So they had to get food crops from West Bengal. So as you can see, that has both positive and negative points. Now let us see what this shows. So this is exactly the black shows. Now this is the yield, average yield from 2010 to 2011, and the other one is 2015 to 2016. That means this is before and after organic farming. So you can see that all the other crops, fruits, potatoes, tubers, cardamom, spices, etc., there is hardly any difference in 5 years after organic farming came in. So it has not really given a better yield. In fact, the mandarins, which is the major group, the oranges of Sikkim, drastically reduced by 22%. So what has happened? Well, so not organic farming may not be always successful if it is taken in its entirety. Another story, absolutely extremely fresh, that happened just a few months ago. All of you must have heard about it or read about it. This is what happened in Sri Lanka. They overnight, President Rajapaksa in April decided that Sri Lanka will become the only country in the world which will be purely organic. So they said on the 29th of April, he banned import of all chemical fertilizers. Any agrochemicals were banned because he wanted to be the first in the world. In 4 months, by end of August 21, he had to declare an economic emergency and a food emergency. They had shifted entirely to organic farming. So why? That is because if you want to shift to organic farming, you need to produce sufficient amount of organic fertilizers, organic biofertilizers, biopesticides, and so on. Then nearly 4 to 5 times what the nation was producing. And hence, a shift entirely to organic farming.
मिल्क सॉलिड है, खोया मतलब शक्कर, ऑरेंज.
Can somebody please put off your mics? Yeah. So thus shifting entirely to organic farming may be disastrous in terms of economy, in terms of food security. How about the effect on environment? Agriculture in general, not only organic, but organic, conventional, totally, contributes to climate change because it produces a large amount of greenhouse gases. These greenhouse gases bring about climate change. Climate change in turn gives rise to global warming, glacier melting, sea level rising, etc., which again affects agriculture. So it is a vicious cycle. Agriculture contributes to climate change affects agriculture. So what are the challenges? One needs to reduce greenhouse gases if it has to be environment friendly, and also one needs to produce a lot of food for the increasing population. So these are the challenges and the dilemma one has to face. If you look at agriculture, it contributes nearly 1/3 of global greenhouse gases. Also due to land conversion because of deforestation and so on. And globally, our population is going to double by 2050. 80% of global deforestation and 11% of anthropogenic, that means human-produced carbon emissions, come from agriculture, leading to water pollution, biodiversity, etc. Although organic farming does limit the greenhouse gases, they are lesser than conventional, but yet because of the low yield, as I said, it leads to deforestation. So again, you're not really saving in terms of organic farming. Besides all this, the biggest single source of greenhouse gases in organic farming is methane from cows, the burps of cows, and from manure. This is called enteric fermentation from livestock. And this accounts for about 40% of agricultural greenhouse gases. So here on the screen, you can see agriculture, forestry, and land use, nearly about 24%, almost equivalent to what industries put out in the environment. So although we keep blaming industries for polluting the environment, remember agriculture is polluting it equally. So are the other energy resources, electricity and so on. So in other words, agriculture is contributing to a large extent to environmental pollution. Here is an agricultural farm. So just a cartoon to show you exactly what's happening. Yes, from sunlight, in the presence of sunlight, carbon dioxide is sequestered, photosynthesis and so on. The crop is harvested, there is litter, so carbon goes into the soil. But you need cattle for producing the organic manure. Cattle produce tremendous amount of methane from the manure as well as from their burps. Plus, the waste has to be put on fire. So you get methane, nitrous oxide, carbon dioxide, and several other non-methagenic organic carbons. Now, manure gives you nitrogen.
Sorry for interruption, Dr. Sheila.
Yeah.
Just 2 more minutes, please, because we have to keep the time for.
Yeah. Okay.
For your,
Yes. Okay. So
Thank you.
59% of carbon dioxide is coming from agriculture. India, as you can see, is the top leading one in the world. And this is how the greenhouse gases contribute to global warming. Maximum contribution is coming from nitrous oxide and methane. Okay, so I think I'll quickly go over. So how do you strike a balance between need to increase food production and limit the adverse effects of environment? You can use GM crops. All of you are aware of the advantages. You can have pesticide resistant, herbicide resistant, etc. You can use nanotechnology where you can use nano fertilizers, nano pesticides. The main key of all this is sustainability. So it's possible in developed countries, we use organic farming, could be more environmentally and viable option. In developing countries, one needs to use a mix of conventional farming, GM foods, GM farming, organic farming could be more realistic. Fruits and vegetables can be grown organically, grains, staple crops can be grown conventionally. So one needs to find a balance between optimizing yield and environmental degradation. Sustainable agriculture takes after the social welfare, economic aspects as well as environmental, which were not taken care of either under the Swaminathan's policy nor under organic farming alone. So one needs to look at all aspects. But in order to have sustainable agriculture, one needs to have tremendous amount of management. Management of post-harvest loss, soil salinity, nutrition, integrated pest management, fishery management, wet field management, water irrigation management, and so on and so forth, for which what we need is technology. So this is how different types of management can be undertaken by use of technology. In other words, what we need is smart agriculture. So cultivation of, we need an integrated, sustainable approach, combination of tradition, innovation, science, and technology. In order to have a sustainable crop production or agriculture in the world. Cultivation of tolerant breeds of plant. This is where one can use GM plants. Then you need livestock. Organic farming, a very important part. Then you have agroforestry. You have various types of innovation that need to be incorporated into our management. So what we have is CSA, Climate Smart Agriculture. This is our National Food Security and Development Goals, which has 3 main aspects. It has to be sustainable, increase the productivity, it has to strengthen the resilience, it has to be climate change resilient, and it has to reduce contribution to climate change. So these are the various ways in which one can do that. I'm just quickly going over it. Okay, so this is the latest figure as of July 23rd, which appeared in Outlook from our Ministry of Agriculture and Welfare, that we have 3.8 million hectares of cultivable land. We now export organic oilseeds, etc. And among the states, Maharashtra, I'm happy to say, is one of them. And these are the crops that we are growing organically right now. But we have a lot more to do, far away to go. So in conclusion, organic farming is an important tool in our toolbox, but we are going to need a variety of tools if we have to fix our food systems. So thank you very much. Going back to our roots now, organic farming, as I said, biopesticides and biofertilizers are two major pillars of organic farming, and our next two speakers are going to emphasize the need for using these in our organic farms in order to make it more sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
The topic given to me is biofertilizers. And before my talk, we have heard very nice explanation about organic farming by Sheila ma'am. It was very exciting. Pardon, ma'am? Okay, there is some other interruption is there. Okay, it's a need of time to go for organic farming now, and use of biofertilizers is just one step taken for our organic farming. So biofertilizers are very important. Just to understand role of bacteria in farming and gardening, I have prepared some presentation. Natural constituents of soil has to be considered first, because whenever we are saying fertilizers, we are adding those fertilizers to soil only. So just a brief about soil. Our main food grown in the soil only. Okay, the soil has some physical properties like sandy soil, alluvial soil, clay soil, etc. That depends on the location, geographical location of soil. Okay, then it has some chemical properties like acidic soil, alkaline soil. Then constituent of soil differs. Iron-rich soils are appearing red in color, while calcium-rich soils are whitish in color, etc. And most important property of a soil is the presence of biological matter or organic matter, which is associated with microorganisms present in the soil, and it plays very important role in crop yield. So fertilizers used in farming and gardening. Biofertilizer is one of them, but mainly organic fertilizers in the form of compost or biofertilizers, they are used now for organic farming. And inorganic fertilizers, that is chemical fertilizers, these are man-made fertilizers. Up till now, they were in a use for getting maximum yield from the farm. Chemical fertilizers, and Sheila ma'am have already explained all these things, the green revolution, how chemical fertilizers came into picture to meet a need of our population. Providing food for this population was the need, and that was the main reason to introduce chemical fertilizers in our system. So nowadays we can realize it was not at all the sustainable way, sustainable concern regarding which leading to ecological imbalance to the system. Then chemical fertilizers are found to polluting soil and water, and they are putting toxic chemicals in our food chain. Toxic chemicals finally affecting human and animal health. Many pests are also developing resistance, which leads to the use of excess harmful pesticides in farming. They are manufactured using natural resources, which are already limited in nature. So unlimited use of these resources will finally lead to excessive shortage of many vital chemicals like phosphate and many others in nature. So unlimited use of chemical fertilizers finally will end to loss of fertility of soil, and it is not a sustainable way, and that is why chemical fertilizers, their use should be stopped, and one has to go for organic fertilizers. And biofertilizer is one of them. It's an organic fertilizer. So what is biofertilizer? Is a substance which contains living microorganisms. When added to the soil, they increases fertility of soil.
Pramila, there is a
Pardon? Pardon, ma'am?
Dr. Pramila?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now we are, because in between there was
Okay, sound interruption. Okay. Biofertilizers containing living microorganisms, when added to the soil, they increases fertility of soil and promotes plant growth. So for the plants, whatever nutrients they want, it is very essential part that the soil should contain essential nutrients, but along with these microorganisms, because they only solubilize these micronutrients and they can, which is accessible for plant group plants. Biofertilizers, of course, when term comes to fertilizer, it is for higher crop yields. So biofertilizers do give higher crop yields. They can replace chemical fertilizers, which are, we have seen, not at all sustainable for long term and are proven to toxic. Biofertilizers increases the uptake and availability of nutrients and micronutrients through solubilization. And then they keep soil chemical free, maintain its natural fertility, because soil should be always alive, healthy and fertile, and that can be achieved with the use of these biofertilizers. Not only crop yield, but they also combat pathogens in both soil and plant and work as natural pesticides for the crop. Biofertilizers retain fertility of soil. They enhances the water holding capacity of soil. Biofertilizers are easy to apply, and lastly, they are very effective and affordable for all. The use of biofertilizers can improve the economy of farmers, and we know what is the economy of farmers nowadays and how it is essential. Okay. What type of biofertilizers are there? So they are nitrogen fixing biofertilizers. Basically, biofertilizers are consisting of many algae, fungi, some bacteria, and many bacteria like nitrogen fixing bacteria, phosphate solubilizing bacteria. They may be free living bacteria in solid or soil, or symbiotic and associative symbiotic along with plants. We know legument roots, they contain some balls to their roots, and which are nothing but the bacteria, nitrogen fixing bacteria. Azolla, we know it is associated with nitrogen fixing bacteria also. Similarly, there are solubilizing bacteria, Bacillus magnetarium, and some names are given here, Penicillium. It is a fungi actually. Then phosphate mobilizing biofertilizers are there. In addition, micronutrient biofertilizers, which contain Bacillus species, they are silicate and zinc solubilizers, and plant growth promoting rhizobacteria, that is Pseudomonas fluorescens are the name for that bacteria. So they promote plant growth. Okay. Biofertilizer components includes biocompost. In a large scale, biocompost is produced using a sugar industry waste material that is decomposed and magnified with human-friendly bacteria and fungi and they are supplied to various plant. They are prepared using various plant material, that is combustion of plant materials, finally leading to biocompost, along with the sugar industry and human-friendly bacteria and fungi. That is what I wanted to say. Okay, Azotobacter, they protect roots from soil pathogens and plays very crucial role in nitrogen fixation, that is atmospheric nitrogen. We know around 73 to 75% atmospheric nitrogen is there, but that can't be available for our plants without the help of these nitrogen fixing bacteria. And so Azotobacter is very important biofertilizer phosphorus solubilizing bacteria. There are many fungi and penicillium bacteria, aspergillus and pseudomonas, etc. And vermicompost is the important part of biocompost again, which is very eco-friendly organic fertilizer, contains vitamins, hormones, organic carbons, sulfur, antibiotics that increase the quantity and quality of crop and also improves the quality of soil, that is fertility of soil. In market, we can see biofertilizers available in the form organic fertilizer, that is a compost from sugarcane industry waste, and even we can manufacture it at home. Azobacter biofertilizer, azospirium biofertilizer, and rhizobium biofertilizers. These are the names available in market, and many companies are manufacturing biofertilizers in this form, you can say. These are just representative pictures, and you can see many more. Even biofertilizers are available in a solution form or soluble form. It is very easy to apply for spray. How biofertilizers are applied in the farm or in a garden? So one of the way is seed treatment. For seed treatment, this biofertilizer slurry is prepared. That biofertilizer, which will contain azotobacter and phosphate solubilizing biofertilizer, they are mixed together, sprinkle and with water, or rice kanji, rice glue, which is called kanji, that is used for better result. For stickiness, it should coat around the seed, and so use of this rice kanji is more beneficial. So these seeds are coated with this biofertilizer. They are dried in shade and then sowed immediately into the farm. Then biofertilizers are also applied to roots while seedling plantation. Many seedlings, they are mango seedlings or tomato seedlings, they are sown. Azotobacter and phosphate solubilizing bacteria, they are added to water to make a slurry of this, and these roots of seedlings are dipped for 30 minutes in that slurry, and then they are planted to the farm immediately. This is a soil application of biofertilizer shown here. Any organic compost is taken and biofertilizer is sprinkled onto the soil. Mix it well, just make it moist. It should be moist, and keep it for 24 hours. And then you can directly apply this mixture to the place where, or to the farm, or even we can apply into our garden pots where we are planting our plants. So the easiest way for garden lovers, we can make it at home, keep it for 24 hours, and then this has to be done before potting and repotting of our garden pots. Okay, 1 day prior to the potting and repotting. Even biofertilizers are available in a granular form, and it is very easy to give them to for plant feeding. Just mix them in a soil, mix it and water your plant. So they are available for our plants. This is how biofertilizers are essential for soil health. It is shown here. When chemical fertilizers are used here, they are soluble in their soluble form. They are directly available or supplied to plants. But excess fertilizers, they will remain in soil, and that is nothing but they will reduce the fertility of soil. However, when organic fertilizers or biofertilizers are supplied to the plants through soil, then organic matter present in the soil, then all nutrients present in the soil, they will be made accessible. They will be solubilized with the help of these microorganisms present in our biofertilizers, and then they are easily available for the plants. Plants will be benefited and soil will remain fertile and healthy after the use of these biofertilizers. This is directly we can see the effect of biofertilizers and chemical fertilizers. You can see here the growth of root as well as shoots. There is a huge difference. Biofertilizers are more healthier for plants than the chemical fertilizers. Now, in practical application, as a garden lover, I am telling this, a practical application, how to apply these biofertilizers, even garden and even farm also. So any biodegradable waste in our home can be converted into home compost in our gardens. Any biodegradable waste from kitchen as well as from our garden that can be converted into a compost, which is nothing but a biofertilizer. So for composting, there are again two different ways. We can make vermicompost of it or simple compost. While composting, one has to enhance the composting procedure with the use of some culture. The various cultures are available in the market, and homemade cultures like Jivamrut, like cow urine we can use. But the use of waste decomposer as a culture for enhancing compost quality is more beneficial and more rich compost we can make out of it. Obviously, what is that waste decomposer? Everybody must be aware that waste decomposer is nothing but the microorganisms, some bacteria, useful bacteria. They are separated from desi cow dung, and this work is done in Ghaziabad Center, which is seated in UP. This is a government center, of course. Scientist Krishna Chandra is involved in this work, and they have isolated these bacteria, and now they are made available for all farmers within India by our Ministry of Science. So these bacteria, once you get, it is very simple to enhance. So to prepare waste decomposer at home, like making curd in your everyday life. So these bacteria, or that's called only waste decomposer, which is a biofertilizer, a biocontrol, as well as soil health reviver for crops. This is the bottle of that waste decomposer. We can get it just for ₹20 from Ghaziabad Center. Nowadays, it is available on Amazon also. So uses of waste decomposer in many ways. It can be used for composting to accelerate the process of composting. It is applied to seed treatment. Just we saw in previous slide where seed treatment using biofertilizers. Only thing, this is a liquid. Just moist your seeds with this waste decomposer. Let them dry in shade and sow them in a field. Then inside composting of plant residue in soil. So after removal of crop, there are many plant residues in the soil. And if we applied this waste decomposer directly into the soil, it helps in inside decomposition of that plant residues and making our soil healthy and fertile. Plant disease and pathogens are also controlled with the help of this waste decomposer biofertilizer. Richest and cheapest biofertilizer for home garden is either a vermicompost or a home compost using waste decomposer as a culture, and waste decomposer itself is a biofertilizer at seed treatment, soil and foliar spray. We can, various ways we can apply it. Why I am insisting of home compost? Because our kitchen waste itself contains variety of green vegetables. Then fruit peels, it is very essential part, fruit peels, because fruit peels contain phosphate and potassium also, which is the essential elements for our plant growth. Onion and garlic peels are there. Chicken and fish bones, they are used as a kitchen waste for making a compost. And almost all essential nutrients for plants are present in these ingredients. So if such a nutritious compost is combined with the great source of microorganisms and effective microorganisms or essential microorganisms, those are isolated in as a waste decomposer. It becomes the best biofertilizer for our garden, and especially for a kitchen garden. I am insisting, because in a Nutri-Kitchen garden, finally those products from Nutri-Kitchen gardens are consumed in our daily diet, and it directly helps us for our immunity, for our health benefits, and all this. And that's all about very short presentation for biofertilizers. That's the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pamela. Yeah, thank you for keeping the time. You have finished well within the time. As I already mentioned,
Opportunity biopesticides. So this is a area of my research for PhD also. So biopesticides are very widely used all over the country, all over the world, in a very tremendous pollution is taking place, which is one of the major component which causes the pollution of air, water, and the concept of biomagnification. I would like to explain that though we think we are using the pesticides in our gardens, in our farms, they reach till the blood as well as womb of the mother, milk of the mother also. So I would like to start with sharing of my PowerPoint presentation. Is the screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Can you make it full screen, Dhanashree, please?
Dr. Dhanashree, you are muted. Please unmute yourself.
Dhanashree, ma'am, we can't hear you.
I think she is still finding to make her presentation. That's why I think she has muted.
Audible?
Yeah, now you are audible, but your screen, your presentation.
Yes. Wait a while.
Yeah.
Is it visible now?
Yes.
Am I sharing my screen? Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Thank you.
So we will focus mostly on botanical biopesticides, along with which I will also discuss about the details of the biopesticides. So very nice title we have considered here as Back to the Roots. So India is a country, we are knowing we are having vast biodiversity, and botanicals are plentifully available in Western Ghats. Mostly we are associated with, and Western Ghat is more older than the Himachala. And the richest biodiversity we are having, which can be a good source for us to develop so many botanical biopesticides. So that we will see through the presentation. Now, what is biopesticides, why biopesticides, and how to make use of the botanical biopesticides will be discussed through the presentation. So biopesticides are biologically best products with broader spectrum of efficacy against key target pests. So we are knowing pests are harmful to the farms, which are consuming most of the yield of the farmers as well as gardeners also. Our beautiful plants, when they get infested with the pests, we definitely get disturbed, as well as in agriculture, the farmer will have to suffer through the economical loss. So anyhow, they have to stop the use of the, they have to use the pesticide to control the loss due to the pests. So but now we realize that pests are not useful, but they are reaching to our brain, to our nervous system, and they are causing a lot of loss to the mankind. So the solution should be found, and there are variety of types of biopesticides now available, but unfortunately people are not using them or taking them seriously, because the insecticides like Roger as well as endosulfan, they are easy to spray. Liter of Roger can be added to bucket of water or diluted more to the through the water, and they can be easily spread. That what we think. But now we have to consider or realize the bad use or bad effects also, which we will see through the next slides. So biopesticides are of various types. Microbial pesticides, which also come under the biopesticides. Here the microbes are used, as Pramila has told, that microorganisms in the soil like Rhizobium, Azotobacter, they are useful to add the soil fertility. Some microbes are there which infest or they infect the pests or pathogens also. They can eat the insects, and automatically we can control the diseases as well as the insect pests also. Some natural parasites and predators are also very important, which can be used as a biocontrol insects. Ladybird beetle was the best example to control the weed also. The water hyacinth and other aspects are also there. So many such insects which can be our friends to control the diseases. They can feed on the aphids also. So that is very important. This food chain should be remain intact. If the bird number is decreasing, naturally the number of insects will grow, and that will be harmful to our farmers. So the whole ecosystem is related, and that should be kept balanced. Biorational behavioral approaches, some like crop rotations as well as seasonal changes or can be considered for growing the crops, and that can be the good biopesticide aspect also. Then some traps and lures are used to attract the insect, to capture the insect. The oil sheets are placed in the garden or in the farms on which the insects can be trapped very well, instead of using or spraying the poisonous pesticides. And last, which I'm going to focus on, that is botanical pesticides. So we'll see that in details. So first of all, we have to find the answer for why. So don't take the use of pesticides in your gardens lightly, because they are having very bad adverse effects of chemical pesticides. They are causing cancers, infertility is increasing. A child, hello, participants, please mute. The children's exposure to the pesticides has also resulted in childhood cancer. So these are the references from Environment Protection Agency. Then immunity collapses. Nowadays, we are experiencing that our elders or our previous generation, they were more stronger than us, and they could have fight like immunity. The word is getting very much popular during this pandemic also. So immunity is very important aspect, which can get hampered with the use of pesticides, because when they go to the water through your gardens, through your farms, definitely they get highly magnified. So adverse effects should be considered, and for that you have to compulsory use the botanical pesticides or other ways to control the pest instead of spraying the poisonous chemicals in our garden. So significant increase in the chromosomal aberrations. So chromosomal aberrations is the major aspect to understand, because when they are harmful to the insect, when they are harming the nervous system of the insect, our chromosomes are nearer to that also. So when they reach in our cells, definitely they are harmful to the human cells also. So they may lead to reduction in brain weight, reduces brain activities, and causes often neurotoxic effects. So why to use the botanical pesticides or biopesticide, that should be well understood. Prolonged intake of pesticides lead to reduction in brain weight, reduces brain activities, and causes often so some randomly used pesticides, chemical pesticides like chlorpyrifos, a broad spectrum organophosphorus insecticides, it affects the nervous system and inhibits the enzyme which is important for transmission of nerves. So all these are now very well proven that we have to strictly say no to the chemical pesticides, and there are plentifully still available in the market. So this can be a movement to stop, because when we were doing the research about the biopesticides, even agricultural researchers were not ready to accept the biopesticides. But I think in these these 10 years, people have started accepting the concept of organic farming. Though in the market we have to insist to ask for the organic products, then only the real change will take place. So this concept of biomagnification should be well understood. It is the process that results in accumulation of a chemical in an organism at higher level than are found in its own food. So when it is present in the diluted form, as it travels towards the upper levels of trophic, from water to insects or birds and till human or the higher top carnivores, it gets much and much concentrated, and that definitely becomes very much harmful. So this is a pyramid which we can, so in rice field it comes to the crabs. So endosulfone story, you might be knowing that it reached to the human bones, and human bones started getting loosened. They got the cramps and twisted bones in the children as well as the elders. So it is such a horrible. So comparatively, if we'll see, the average consumption in India is less. So luckily, we can proudly say that we are poor country in using the chemical pesticides. Only 300 grams per hectare. In USA, it is 3 kilo per hectare. In Japan, it is much more, because they are having less land and might be trying to get more yield from that. So pesticide use is highest in there. India shares 12% of world's consumption, but 1/3 of the pesticides poisoning cases occur in India. Due to lack of literacy, many poisoning cases also occur in India. So strictly, at least in gardens, it should be completely, not only in gardens, but at farm level also, they should be completely stopped. These 3 top pesticides residue to export. Nowadays, our agriculture products are not accepted as they are having the residues on the products, like mangoes production, our grapes production is rejected at export level by the quarantine department, because since the grape is cultivated till its harvest, 70 chemicals are spread on the grape crop. So most of them, and you might have experienced that. So the best solution is to stop the chemicals use. And how can we guaranteedly say that these are the without a pesticide? So we always say gardening is the best option. We can grow on our own vegetables, our own fruits, so that we can say that our products and whatever we are consuming, that is without pesticides. So I would like to salute these 3 ladies. Rachel Carson, in 1960, she has written a book, Silent Spring, in which she realized that the birds which were found at the riverside of her town, their number is decreasing. When she was a zoologist, and when she met the biochemical analysis, she found that DDT was found in the birds' bones. So though we think that we are spraying the chemicals in our farms, in our gardens, and that will be having the less residual effect, but they can travel to the birds' bones. So they become the part of the food chains, food web, and it is definitely harmful to all of us. We must read the book of Vandana Shiva. She is taking very positive and good efforts about organic farming and formed the Navadana organization. And recently, though illiterate, we cannot call her illiterate. Now she has honored with the Padma Shri and Rai Bai Popre. We had opportunity to meet her. She is conserving her seeds in her area, and she did not have to spray the pesticides because the regional food is very important. The regional plants, we should conserve our species in that area. That is also one important aspect. So I would like to suggest you to read The Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, which caused the environmental revolution, we can say, or the movement started since then in 1960, but still people are not accepting the ban on the chemical pesticides. So very nicely she has explained the elixirs of death, recalm of the soil. These are titles of various chapters she has discussed through her books. Stolen harvest is also very important, or very nicely explained by Vandana Shiva, that how our natural resources are stolen from our area. So all that, it is our responsibility to take care of all of this. So it is not development of corporate profit, it is development of ecosystem in their own terms, development of cultures in their own terms, and it is sustainable for society and sustainable for nature. So root level, or back to the roots, is very nice title which we have considered for this webinars, because traditional knowledge is very important. And considering that, I have chosen 11 plants which are from our area, some are from the forest areas also, or which we found near ourselves. And you can find such a plants in your area which are very less infected by any pathogen. So Dashaparani Arka is very much popular. Actually, we will try to make the videos of such a this time is very less. Otherwise, I think Vijaya madam was expecting the demonstrations, but we will do that definitely. Some videos are made by our Gardens Club members also. We can share them. So Annona squamosa leaves or fruit rind, Cascabella thievaceae, which is commonly cultivated along the roadsides. You can see their leaves keep always shining. So such plants which are having the biopesticidal potentials or some other Ayurvedic potentials, Terminalia chebula, Acacia consina, which is used as a soap nut. I have filed a patent for this and we have got very good results. These acacia pots, you might be knowing, the newer generations, they are using shampoos, but previously these water soaked pots of Acacia consina, they can elute very easily water soluble sequiterpenes are there, and that elute can be spread in your gardens or for controlling the common pest, garden pests like aphids. So this is the simplifying the science, as ILSA has our motto, that taking science to the masses. Similarly, all this, whatever we are doing in the laboratories, should be simplified for the people. So use of alcohol for dissolving the biochemicals. Instead of that, I would like to suggest choose the plants which are easily soluble in the water. So you may find many such plants like Vitex nigundo in your area. And Western Ghat is very rich. We are having it is considered as a mega biodiversity center, harboring more than 4,000 species of flowering plants alone, of which 1720 species are endemic to the area. So India should consider its potential because every plant is a biochemical factory and we are having a vast scope. The younger generations can find out many such chemicals. Recently, we are knowing that Tinospora cordifolia, which is declared as our national medicinal plant. So that is abundantly available all over India. In Western Ghat also, it is having abundantly giloy, you might have heard about. So many such plants we are having, which are having capacity to control the pest also. For example, so I have tried with the Spodoptera luteura, which are also called as an army worm. You can see this is a soybean leaf, and when the Spodoptera infest its, I have counted, they were 250 on single leaf. The farmer cannot stop just looking that his soybean is eaten by such a tiny grubs. So, but these are the soft bodied, no need of spraying any harmful poisonous chemicals for controlling such a simple pest. Decoction of Acacia consina can easily control it. You can take the Azadirachta India neem leaf extract, just crush it in a mixer, dilute it and sieve it, because it should not come in the pump with which we are spraying. So I like that. These are some common ornamental pests, as we are focusing here on the gardens. White flies, aphids, these are some common pests which are available in the gardens. And these are the Microsiphon rosei. On roses also, such a rose aphids are seen. White flies are seen on poinsettias. So these are the pictures of some garden pests, and such many caterpillars. Now we have to see whether the caterpillars are of butterflies. Okay, sometimes like some plants should be left for the insects also, that way, because my students and many of our gardeners, they are working with the butterfly garden also. So the use of pesticides will be harmful definitely to the butterfly caterpillars also, but you should learn by observation to identify the pest. You can see I just given one spray of Acacia consina extract, and their bodies got shrunken, and this is the result after 48 hours. So easily you can control most of these pests which are soft bodied. If they are really harming your crop like Spodoptera, you can give a spray of Acacia consina pod extract in water. So you can see, so these are the this is the untreated field and this is the treated field. The farmer is spraying. So this was the experiment we made during my PhD work. So another pest which had created havoc in the sugarcane crop, you might be remembering 20 years back, Ceratophragma linearia. So sugarcane woolly aphid, it totally collapsed the sugarcane industry. So these are the aphids on the lower side of the, many such aphids we find in the gardens also. So you can see here also leaf extract of Acacia consina pods, which are dissolved and diluted in the water, that gave best results. The leaf got cleared, and these are the eggs as well as various stages of the aphids which drop down after spraying. And you can give the 2 sprays at the interval of 24 hours if the infestation is higher. But in the gardens, usually if you keep proper observations, it is very easy to control the pests. So these are the phyto extracts we prepared. You can recycle the bottles. Just 1 kg of Acacia consina. It was for the field spraying. In gardens, you can just take 20 grams of Acacia pod, soak them in water overnight, and whatever elute comes out, you can put it in the sprayer and spray on the plants. That gives the best results. We have tried that for the snails also. If they are sometimes the snails get they infest the water lilies also. So put a pinch of the Acacia consina or put some pods in it. Definitely it will repel the snails from your garden. So many such now some people will say we don't get the acacia pots in our area. You can find out. There is a vast scope of research to find out, because if you go to the market, very few biopesticides are available. I think other than neem, no pesticide is available in the market. So you can go for finding out the plants with good leaves, less infestation, because usually in Dashaparani earth they collect the leaves from that particular area. You can collect some weed leaves also, mostly the Asteraceae member, because marigold leaves, they are having good potential. Chrysanthemum leaves, pyrethrum is extracted from the Shevanti, what we call chrysanthemum floral heads also. They are having good potential as a biopesticide. So you can grow such a beautiful vegetables. These are the terrace gardens of our students, and most of them, they don't use any chemical pesticide, as well as Pramila has shown. When your plants are grown in biofertilizers, definitely the chances of infestations are also very less. One more aspect, when we go on spraying the poisonous chemicals, the insect generations, they grow very fast. Within 1 year, there hundreds of generations can be growing, and each generation becomes more resistant. So that treat is also there. You have to go on adding or increasing the concentration of chemical fertilizers. Benefit of biopesticides is, if you mix 1 or 2 plants, it will be, the extract will be having synergistic effect. It will be a combination of many biochemicals. So insect genome will get confused whether to increase the power against which biochemical they should increase their resistance. So that is the benefit of biopesticides. So you can see many references in our old literature also, as India is having a rich base of Ayurveda, from which many plants, while choosing the plants for my research, I went through the references also. You can see the references, old references will be definitely useful for us. You can find out the traditional knowledge from your grandmas also, like grandma's pouch we found for the medicinal purpose. So sustainable agriculture is to rediscover and develop strategies whose cost and ecological side effects are minimal. So that is very important. Ecological side effects, what we are talking about. The Bible and other early literature mentions plant diseases such as rusts, mildews, blights, blasts, which are also commonly found in our gardens also. The use of locally available plants in the control of pests is ancient technology in many parts of the world. Higher plant harbor numerous compounds which provide them resistant to pathogenic organisms. This is what I wanted to explain, because the insects should get confused. They are having their own immune system or fighting system, and they keep on attacking your crops with the advanced genome structure. So plant, if the biopesticides are plant based, the biochemicals are a mixture of various compounds. It will be having the phenols, it will be having the other components also, and it will be much beneficial. So these are some old references again. Varaha Samhita indicates that during AD 5054 the roots of Vasaka, that is Adathoda vesica, Adulsa, what we call in Marathi, which is a very good remedy for cough also. Leaves of Ati Muktala, that is Hyptage bengalensis, were being used as a seed dresser against insects and worms. Neem, turmeric, and other plants like tobacco have been used as a pesticides as well as in medicinal formulations. Neem leaves we must be knowing.
Sorry to interrupt, Dr. Tanushree. You have just 2 more minutes to complete.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, thank you. So tobacco leaves, as it is having nicotine, dairies is for rotenone and chrysanthemum, as I mentioned, which is one of the component of pyrethrum. So many such a list of plants you can find out through various references. So these are some laboratory pictures we have to prove, because now the laboratories are very much advanced, GCMS and everything, because you cannot say the plants are having the less powerful chemicals. So these are the about previously I shown you the picture about the insecticidal efficacy. Now these we can say some of the fungi. This is Macrophomina, Rhizoctonia, Alternaria, and Fusarium. By using the food poison method, or we can say this is poisoned with the botanical chemical, and this is control, which is untreated. You can see the difference. So these are the best result I found from Acorus calamus. Acorus Vekhanda in Marathi, sweet flag in English. So that is having very good potential. I have used them to, the powder was tried with the leather also, because leather shoes, leather bags, they get infested easily with the fungi. If you spray the powder of Acorus calamus, you can get best results. You can protect your leather goods. And similarly, these soil fungi, because fungi is another major pest in the fields or in the gardens also, which harms, or if you are conserving the seeds, you can put it in the Acorus calamus powder. So this is the poison food assay method I tried in the laboratories. Those students who are interested in doing the research about the antifungal and having the facilities, laboratory facilities, they can try various plants to find out the antifungal efficacy. So these are some market products. As I directing Dashaparani, you have to make the trainings are given by the agriculture departments also, pyrethrin, Nimzal. So comparatively the number is very less, which we have to increase. So we have taken many efforts to show the demonstrations in the college campus about biofertilizer use, as well as many of our students of Gardens Club. This is a picture. I had presented my paper at American Horticultural Society, and those people also appreciated our idea of using botanical as a biopesticide. So it was a good experience. So let's join hands. Let's consider this as a movement, because a lot of still there is a very big lobby. Industries like RCF and so many worldwide industries, they are involved in production of pesticides. So they will not allow you to go for use of biopesticide, biofertilizer. So together, by joining hands like ISA, and we all should take initiative to popularize the biopesticides as well as use of biofertilizer. Convincing people is very important. I think with this short time, I have given you ideas about using the leaves, fruits, seed, powder simply in the water soluble forms, and you can control most of the garden pests. No need of spraying any harmful chemicals, at least in your garden. So this will be a very important aspect, scientific aspect, to conserve or restore our ecosystem, as well as best for health also. All those major national goals of food security or global goals, we can say, food security starts with the use of organic farming. Madam has given very good presentation about the organic farming also. So when we will start with our gardens, definitely it will be a good to popularize and to tell people the wise use of our own floral remedies, which can control the pests very well. Thank you very much. So
Thank you.